Hey guys, it's Taurine. I wanted to make a little video, kind of talking about a spec I've been playing in pre-made Battlegrounds a lot lately with my team. This is the reason I wanted to play this spec and make this video was because of some of the things that Palitime and Drakova talked about in their latest episode of Palicast. They talked about Holy Paladins and Battlegrounds, and they talked about Holy Paladins specking into Repentance, and it made me think a lot about it, and I was like, you know, that's really good actually. Like, I can see, like, everything they were saying made sense, and I agree with them on the whole thing about how, like, Deep Holy is not very good for Battlegrounds, and I've been, like, kind of messing around with a spec that I like. Two variations of a spec that plays pretty similarly, that fills that role. I think the spec works better in Warsong than it does in Arathi Basin, but I do think it is still good in Arathi Basin, like pre-made Arathi Basin. So I'll talk about it real quick, and then I'll just play out this Battleground so you guys can watch, I guess. So this is my talent tree right here. It's 20 Holy, 0 Protection, 31 Retribution. The other variation is 13 points in Holy, 7 points in Prot, and 31 points in Retribution. And the difference between the two is that... Damn, this fucking fear, man. The difference between the two is that the 20 points in Holy spec, in my opinion, is a little more if you're just like purely focused on healing, and I think it's a lot better if you don't have very good gear, or if you do have very good gear, in my opinion, because you'll be like critting a lot more, so you're getting a lot of mana back from Illumination. Because obviously a major downside to the spec would be you're a Holy Paladin without much crit, right? Because you're not getting Holy Power. So I think this version requires a little better gear. My gear isn't the best for... I mean, I have some of the major pieces, like I have 5-piece T2 and 3-piece Marshal, which is a big part of how I envision this build playing out. But a lot of the off pieces I have aren't very good. I have like the AV neck and the Warsong ring and things like that. But the way I see this spec playing out in Battlegrounds is kind of like a cleanse bot, because that's just a word that I've been using a lot to describe it. Because I noticed that a lot of the time, most of my globals in Battlegrounds I'm not even like spinning healing, because like priests are obviously better battleground healers and raid healers. So what the paladins do, right? You sit there and you cast a big old holy light, you're gonna get counterspelled like you just saw. But cleanse is just insane, right? I would argue it's one of our best spells, like one of our best, if not our best defensive spell, in my opinion. So a lot of what I've just been doing in Battlegrounds is just sitting back, cleansing people, throwing out buffs, and then, to use Drakova's words from Palicast, be like an emergency healer, right? Like if the priests are struggling, or if like someone gets hit by a big alley shaman burst and he's like super low, you know, you could like bop Mortal Strike off of them and then toss them a heal. But I feel like your strength isn't really just like being a main healer, it's like being a support class. And I think, even though you have all these talents in Ret, I find myself using a sword and board and just healing a lot more in pre-mades than I would like using a two-hander and actually doing DPS. But you can still obviously do damage with the spec. You're really all you're missing would just be the hit points from, or the hit talents from the Ret tree, which could easily be replaced with gear, like a little gear swap. Like you switch out like Oni neck, or like Don Julio's band, or Don Julio's the AV ring. Yeah, Don Julio's band. Sorry, I had a brain fart for a second. But just throw on some hit pieces, and although I will say that I think that's better for like dueling and like 1v1ing than it is actually like battleground healing. for Battleground Healing, I actually really like this build I have right now of Deathbringer main hand with Malice Stars offhand. Malice Stars is a really good offhand for Battlegrounds in my opinion, because of how much armor it has. The stats are really good, and the MP5 is nice. And I actually think MP5 is a really important stat with this build, because of how much you're cleansing, and you're not really getting the... If you are spec'd to Illumination, you're not getting the most out of it, and if you're not spec'd into it, obviously you're not getting any benefit out of it. So I will say that is one of the downsides of this spec, in my opinion, is that it's a little less mana efficient compared to most healer specs. But I think it's not that big of a deal, because by the time you start to have mana problems, the fate of that match, that battle that you're in, that team fight, is usually already been decided. So it's, in my opinion and in my experience, that's how it seems to play out. So I don't think it's that big of an issue. Maybe like on long fights, like really drawn out fights like in AV or something, or like a really long BS fight, maybe like in Arathi Basin, I think it would kind of struggle there. But in like short Warsong fights and stuff like that, you don't really notice the mana issue too much, because you have a big mana pool, obviously, because you're wearing mostly healing gear and spell power gear in it with intellect and stamina armor. But you don't really have the mana regen talents from Illumination usually, and if you do, you don't have that much crit. So some of the things, like I was saying, that you like stat-wise might want to build with this is like MP5 especially. I prefer spell power over plus healing, just raw plus healing, because I like having the opportunity to just turn around and like be offensive like really effectively. But obviously you don't have to play offensive. You can just like go full plus healing and be very just defensive, which I think is also another really good way to play it. I just like being offensive from time to time and hitting people hard with my Deathbringer. What else? Armor is really big. You want to be really tanky, and if you're doing 13-7, if you're doing 13-7-31, you'll have, in my opinion, you should be getting redoubt, because if you're doing that route, you're usually getting, the reason you're doing that is for Guardian's Favor, so you can be like very supporty. And I think having, and if you're being like a support in a battleground, usually just rocking sword and board, so it's better to just use redoubt just for that block chance. It makes you even more effective against melee. What else? Improved devotion aura is not bad, but I find the devotion or the redoubt to be more useful. What else did I want to talk about? I will say that playing the Illumination version of the 20 points in Holy is a little annoying sometimes, because like you'll want to be like casting Freedom and bop a whole bunch, and you'll notice, like, especially if you play with that talent usually, which I do because I play Ret Reckoning and I always get that talent. It's kind of annoying not having it. It takes some getting used to. It feels weird, but it's not that bad. Honestly though, I think next time I respec, if I still plan on playing this spec, I probably will go that route. But that's also mainly because I don't think my gear is very good to play the Illumination version. So I think I'd rather just go full like support, like utility with this build. I think Deathbringer is actually a really good weapon to use with this build, because when you do get to be offensive, you're usually using Seal Command, and Deathbringer has amazing synergy with Seal Command as far as one-handers go. One of the best, in my opinion. So it's definitely a really good option. I mean, you can obviously go with a healing one-hander if you like being more defensive, but like I mentioned earlier, I like being offensive sometimes, so I don't mind using a melee weapon and running up and whacking people. One of the nice things about this build, I will say, is also the crowd control, not just through Repentance and Hodge, which if you're running the 3-piece Marshal, which I think is best for this build, in my opinion, you'll get that Hodge cooldown reduction. you have access to seal command, right? And if you have access to seal command, then that means you can seal twist with justice, right? And that means you're gonna have even more CC, which is really good because you're just like gonna be like right there. I just stunned this guy with by judging command and immediately switching to justice. So like there's all sorts of like cool synergy you can do between like seal command, repentance, the Hodge set bonus. Like there's a lot of control with this build, which is really nice for a healer. Another thing too I want to point out that a lot of people actually overlooked when I saw people discussing this build in like discords and stuff was that they didn't really talk about some of the ret talents that are actually pretty good for a holy paladin, right? Those being Eye for an Eye, especially really good holy paladin talent, in my opinion, or just paladin talent in general. Like, let's say you're sitting in a team fight healing, and a shaman opens on you, right? He hits you for, you know, a lot of damage. He's gonna take a lot of damage because obviously you have Eye for an Eye. That's really good. Just having more damage like that, and just punishing them for trying to punish you. Vindication. I have 1 point in there. I think I might want to take the 2 points out of Pursuit of Justice and put it there. I don't really like Pursuit of Justice that much. Sometimes I mess around with it just for, you know, because I'm lazy and I like running stamina enchants. But I think I'd recommend running 3 points out of Vindication instead of Pursuit of Justice, because this is especially useful in Warsong Gulch in my opinion, from what I've found. Because proccing 3 out of 3 Vindication on an enemy flag carrier Druid, and Vindication procs a lot, I see it proc very often, this can really help reduce their mitigation and avoidance, and it can make them a lot easier to kill. So that's really awesome. The parry is also really nice. It makes it even more tanky, especially if you're getting 5 out of 5 readout. You know, it's going to make you very, very tanky for melee and just so annoying to deal with. You've got that block chance, you've got the parry, you've got plate armor. You know, rogues and warriors are going to have a really annoying time trying to fight you. Is there anything else I wanted to point out? Oh yeah, so with the Illumination version, there is the opportunity to put the 2 points in Unyielding Faith. I like this talent, but I feel like it doesn't really help me too much, because I feel like I'm still getting hit by fear a lot. It's not bad though. I mean, if you're going into Illumination, then I would definitely recommend you pick this up, but you don't have to pick it up. If you're going purely for Battlegrounds, like pre-made Battlegrounds too, I personally would go for Divine Intellect, just because I think having a bigger mana pool with this build, which already kind of struggles with mana a little bit in team fights, is more important. But I think if you're like pugging or like solo queuing and stuff, or if you're trying to be like do more damage and be offensive and stuff, I think Divine Strength would be better as well. Spiritual Focus is a must, obviously, and then you want at least 2 points of healing. Like, you could do a third. You know, you could do like 3 here, 1 here. I think you should get Consecration, honestly. I think Consecration... I meme on this spell a lot in PvP, but I think it actually has a lot of uses. Like, you'll notice if you ever watch like any of my streams and you see me play Consecration specs, like I'll just be like walking around in Battleground or in a like War PvP area, and I'll just drop a rank 1 Consecration somewhere just to like chump check rogues that are trying to sneak up on me and things like that. Or like if I'm trying to drink, I'll just like drop one and then start drinking, you know what I mean? So I think it's not a bad spell at all, and especially like, let's say you're having a big team fight on a flag, right? Drop a max rank Consecration, or like if you proc, let's say you proc Vengeance, 5 out of 5 Vengeance, right? Like as you up there smacking people, drop a big old max rank Consecration in the middle of the flag, you're gonna be hitting all those warriors and plate wearers for the full damage of the Consecration. It's gonna add up. You know, it's not a whole lot, but it definitely adds up, which is really nice. I'm trying to think what else. Auras, pretty straightforward. I usually just rock Devotion Aura just to be tankier and more annoying to melee. Then obviously you'll just swap auras depending on, you know, what type of cast you're dealing with more. You do pick up Sanctity Aura with this build, but I haven't been using it very much. But that's also because I've been pre-mating, so I haven't really been using my two-hander. But I think if you're in a situation where you're trying to be offensive and use your two-hander, then I think you should use Sanctidor. I feel like if you're using like a Deathbringer, it's not too worth, but it can definitely be helpful to give you some extra damage. I think that's all I wanted to say off the top of my head, off the top of my head about the spec. I call it like the support ret build. I think it's really, really good, honestly. I think it's better than Deep Holy and Warsong Gulch for sure. Arathi Basin, I'm still a little torn on it, but I definitely think it has its uses in Arathi Basin. I think in Arathi Basin, something like Holy Reckoning might be a little better, just something a little more defensive and tankier. But that's just my opinion. I think it still has a place in Arathi Basin though, because it's been working out for me. But that's all I wanted to talk about. If you guys have any questions, ask in the comments. You can join my Discord. And Deus Vult.